What's going on, guys? Capine here and welcome back. And in this video I'll be featuring Eevee in the Holiday Cup Little Edition. Yes, you heard that right, Eevee. And it's an absolute menace. With the buff to Dig that happened 2 seasons ago, Eevee finally has a good coverage move, along with that body slam spam that shotted up the Little Cup rankings. Eevee has very similar stats to that of Vulpix, so it plays kinda like it, but dare I say, even better. The reason being, even though Vulpix gets Body Slam and its typing is better for coverage than the pure normal type of Eevee, Eevee gets access to Stab Quick Attack, but more importantly, Stab Body Slams, or same type attack bonus. That added damage due to Stab is huge, especially where Pokemon are as glassy as they are in the Little Cup. Now the downside, Eevee does require an Elite Charge TM to get access to Body Slam. However, it is worth the investment, as even though I'm using it as a closer where it puts in a ton of work, it's also a very good safe swap. And with that, let's get right to the battles. Alright, game's first battle, we lead Ducklett into Shadow, Alolan, Graveler, absolutely terrible lead. We are going to safe swap into Vigoroth and we bait out a Talonflame. And this is why Vigoroth is so good on the safe swap here, because you almost always guarantee switch or shield advantage. As in Little Cup, where everything just hits so hard, if you land a Body Slam, you can basically just counter down and take switch, so your opponent's almost always forced to respect it. And in this situation, my opponent respects the Rock Slide. Vigoroth gets me shield advantage, and that's perfectly fine by me. So I'm going to let it go down, bring back in my Ducklett, and the reason why I'm just going for energy here, because even when Brave Bird is resisted, it is not. It hits like an absolute truck. Brave Bird lands, and in the back they have a Skeledirge, and now this is going to be close. I feel like I'm going to have to go for a bait here, otherwise the Skeledirge will outpace me. Risky bait, but the bait pays off. Eevee, with the successful Body Slam bait, going to be shielding up this Disarming Voice. And here, I'm going to throw one more quick attack and then the Dig. The reason why, I don't want to take that extra Incinerate damage. Dig takes out the Skeledirge, and this right here is why we didn't want to take that extra Incinerate damage. Eevee able to hang on, make it to the Body Slam, and take out the Graveler. So first game, and that's a great showing of what Eevee is capable of doing. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, Ducklett into Ducklett. So I just like to stay in this matchup and go straight for the Brave Bird. I mean, hey, most Duckletts survive a Brave Bird. So I lose CMP, I'm going to shield it. I always survive this with like 1 or 2 HP, but this time I don't, and I'm absolutely shocked. My opponent must have been running a higher attack Ducklett for the CMP ties, and that extra attack must have just been enough to just barely take me out. So kind of unfortunate, but most of the time you will survive that Brave Bird, which is why I like going for the Brave Bird right off the bat. They bring in an Eevee, I get the counter get down with my Vigoroth and leave with a ton of energy. If they bring back in that Ducklett, they are going to be forced to give up both of their shields here, as I will make it to 2 Rock Slides. Rock Slide number 1 comes through, and Rock Slide number 2 comes through as well. Potentially these were good baiting situations, given that my opponent is most likely going to shield them regardless if they're coming back in with a flying type that would have to take super effective from rock type damage. But nonetheless, I want to guarantee the shields or the knockout with the Rock Slide. And now I'm able to bring in my Eevee. They do get a debuff with the Bubble Beams, which is kind of unfortunate because now that means I'm going to have to throw off my second Body Slam. And now here, we're just hoping it's something that Eevee can handle in the back. It's another Shadow, Alolan, Graveler. Eevee just barely able to hang on, make it to another Bulldoze, of which one shots the Graveler, and Eevee closing strong again. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Ducklett into a Shadow Golbat, and this is a fairly neutral matchup as it's basically all dependent on baits. But my opponent makes it easy for me. They just go for the Poison Fang right off the bat, and it looks like they're going for the fast move Beatdown. So for me, I'm going to build up to that Brave Bird. I'm going to bait with the Bubble Beam. My opponent does shield the Bubble Beam. And now here, I'm going to shield their Poison Fang since I know I can make it to a Brave Bird. and I'm just going to go for it, right? If my opponent decides to call the Bubble Beam, they're going to hard punish me, so I want to guarantee both shields or the KO with that Brave Bird, and now I'm going to swap in my Vigoroth. I do have a shield advantage here, and I am looking to keep it, as I do tank that Poison Fang. My opponent now swaps into their own Vig. I'm able to get off a Body Slam's worth of chip damage, and that is absolutely huge, because now this puts it in quick attack downrange for my Eevee. Little unfortunate there, I do lag when I come in, so I miss that, so I don't get the quick attack sneak. And that's the reason why that's fortunate, is because my opponent gets an extra counter's worth of damage onto me. And in the little cup, every little bit of damage does hurt. My opponent brings in a double. They wait to try and see my fast attack animation, but they wait a turn too long, so we're able to swap out, make the catch, overfarm just until their next Body Slam, which in turn is going to allow us to outpace this Golbat to another Body Slam and take it out. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Ducklett into an Amaura. Terrible lead for us, so we are going to save swap into our Vigoroth, and they meet it with Cottonee. So now here, we just need to make sure we throw on good timing, and we will reach 2 moves, of which, again, guarantees shield advantage against my opponent. And that's fine, because like I said earlier in the video, when Brave Bird's resisted, it's not. It hits so hard regardless. So from here, I'm going to bring in my Ducklett, look for the wing attack down. Since I am locked up against the Amaura, no need for me to shield it, and I'm just going to save 2 shields for my Eevee to give me a chance to close this out. Now, I do end up going for the Bubble Beam here. I potentially should have just committed to the Brave Bird and then swapped out for the extra damage, but either way, I'm going to bring in my Eevee, and they have a Vigoroth in the back. So unfortunately, it looks like my opponent does have me hard countered, but we're going to see what we can do. Body Slam does land, and that does a lot of damage. Like I said, that stab Body Slam, it's super, super helpful. We're going for the quick attack down. We do get it. We're going for this Body Slam right away. Body Slam lands, and now, since my opponent let that go, we're going for the fast move beatdown. We have a shield. We need to see if we can make it in time. Will my opponent reach 2 Weather Balls in time? Wing attack comes through, and my opponent gets there on 1 HP. Very, very close game. Hard count on the lead swap and in the back, and we were able to bring it so close. GG's to my opponent. Well played to them. Next battle, Alolan Marowak Lead. This is a very good lead for us, and my opponent swaps into an Amaura, so I am going to bring in my Vigoroth. These double super effective counters absolutely shredding through it. Now, Amaura is not really a safe swap in this cup. In my opinion, a good safe swap in this cup, just because it can get absolutely slammed by Vigoroth, like as you see here. But the only reason why they would be safe swapping an Amaura is if they have an Aurorus in the back and they're trying to bait out the Vigoroth. So I do get the shield from the Alolan Marowak with that Rock Slide. Now I can safely bring back in my Ducklett. I'm going to let this go, saving 2 shields for my Eevee, as I will need both those shields if it is the Aurorus. And here I'm just going to go for the Brave Bird. My opponent's down a shield. I'm not expecting them to give up their final shield, which they do not, and it is that Aurorus. So we're able to hang on, get to the Bubble Beam, and this Bubble Beam right here will solidify the matchup for us. We were in a good spot otherwise, but that Bubble Beam does guarantee the win, as we are going to get to this Body Slam. And my opponent does let it go, knowing they will have to take at least 1 in the process. But in doing so, I will just be able to shield Meteor Beam, which is their win con, and get the quick attack down. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Ducklett into Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Another terrible lead for us, so we are going to save swap into our Vigoroth, and we bait out the Sandy Gas. This is the job of the Vigoroth save swap too. Not only get shoulder switch advantage, which in this case, this team likes shield advantage better than switch, really, just because, again, how I've said how hard Brave Bird hits. But Vigoroth doing its job here, baiting out the ghost type so Eevee does not have to see it. And now I do end up shielding that Scorching Sands just for the case to try and see if I can make a play for switch and bring shields down. And then I realized that after I made that shielding decision and my opponent shielded, Vigoroth did its job. I'm just going to let it go and get energy on my Ducklett instead. So I do make it to the Brave Bird. And watch this. Look what my opponent does. They let that Brave Bird go. That's a resisted Brave Bird. And that just straight up knocks out the A-Slash. It's crazy how much damage it does. And in the back, my opponent saves a shield for the Dragonite, but they are not going to be able to get the Dragon Breath down in time, as Eevee does make it to 2 body slams. My Eevee is actually a rank 1 Eevee as well, so it has even more bulk than otherwise, and it's just absolutely crazy how much work it puts in. Next battle, picking up a GreatLead into a Cottonee, and my opponent's gonna swap into a Vigoroth. Me counter swapping my Vigoroth, I can get a couple wing attacks of damage in first, and just counter all the way down and leave with energy myself and guarantee switch. But this would only be advantageous if I can reach 2 body slams versus the Cottonee, and unfortunately I'm not. So a little bit of a misplay there. Really, I should have stayed in, gone for the Bubble Beam, and then counter swapped into my Vigoroth, because I didn't reach that second body slam. But if I was, then the 1 shield farm down play would have been fine. So a little bit of a misplay there, but it's all right. They bring in an Aurorus, and now we're gonna go for this Bubble Beam. And my opponent commits a shield, and now here's where I make the second and critical misplay of the game. I go for another Bubble Beam, thinking I'm gonna make a third, but I don't. If I made a third Bubble Beam, I would be in a fantastic spot to close out this game, but since I didn't, I should have gone for the Brave Bird, because, again, I sound like a broken record with how hard it hits, but a resisted Brave Bird does twice as much damage as a super effective Bubble Beam. And as you'll see there, with how much health my opponent had left, if I went for the Brave Bird, I would have taken that game, but nonetheless, my opponent played that really well, so GG's to them. Next battle, Ducklett into a Stunfisk. We are going to save swap into our Vigoroth, and we bait out a Cottonee. So again, we are going to be able to get that shield advantage in this matchup as we make it to a second body slam. Does get their shield. And now we're going to wait out the clock and then send in our Ducklett. I don't wait out the clock all the way just because the timer will be up by the time the Stunfisk comes back in. But regardless, I should have waited it out all the way just to be safe and make sure. Now I am, again, going for the Brave Bird. We farm down, we leave with the Brave Bird. Gonna get this off for chip damage. We'll put it in body slam range later. And now my opponent is gonna go for a Mud Bomb here. I am gonna shield it just to preserve some health. And now they're gonna save swap into a Skarmory. So again, hard countered on the lead, hard countered in the swap, hard countered in the back, but we're gonna see what we can do to close this match out. I had a 4 quick attack head start, so we're gonna see how Eevee can put up in this bad matchup against the Skarmory. And look at that, those stab body slams and stab quick attacks. That's with 2 body slams landing. Already has the Skarmory in the red. It's just crazy. So now I'm gonna load up an extra energy, throw this body slam right before they get to their next move, which puts them in 1 wing attack range. So I swap into my Ducklett, so to either catch the move if they throw, or to wing attack down if they don't, of which Skarmory goes down, Eevee comes back in, able to reach another body slam and close out this match from what was an improbable 1. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, another Stunfisk lead. We're going to swap into our Vigoroth, and they meet it with AWAC. Vigoroth, doing what Vigoroth does best, getting shield advantage. I go for a little risky bait here, hoping that I can bait with a body slam and then reach another rock slide. which is a potential here because my opponent's going to go for the Bone Club, but we go down with the Rock Slide. We aren't fortunate enough to get the quote-unquote new mechanic, and Vigoroth goes down with the Rock Slide. And now comes in Ducklett. I will respect the Shadow Bone, but they go for a Shadow Ball, and that's even better. So now we can overfarm, go for the Bubble Beam. This is only Bone Club, so I can let it go. It's going to do no damage to my Ducklett. Wing attack down. Back in comes the Stunfisk. Go for the Brave Bird, and now I'm going to dip right back into my Eevee. Brave Bird does land, and now they have their own Shadow Ducklett in the back. Honestly, I'm a bigger fan of regular Ducklett as a Shadow Ducklett just because of the bulk that comes with regular Ducklett. Plus, it still hits so hard since it's the little cup. And being able to apply the Bubble Beam debuffs just really makes that added defense from being non-Shadow a lot more advantageous, in my opinion at least. So now we're going to load up, fire off this Body Slam on the CMP tie. Their Ducklett's unfortunately just able to hang on, but the rank 1 Eevee able to hang on, get the quick attack down with 1 HP, make it to another Body Slam, and again 2 Stunfisk leads, 2 victories with Eevee closing it out. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, Ducklett into Vigoroth. Now here, this is an interesting one, because you can either no-shield the first Body Slam from your opponent, or shield the first one like I do here. The reason why I'm saying that is because you are going to have to shield a Body Slam regardless, as they will make 2. Plus, it also depends on the tendencies of your opponent, as in a you shield, I shield, or a you don't shield, I don't shield kind of situation, especially since we are going for the Bubble Beam baits. Bubble Beam does get shielded, and now here, building up to the Brave Bird again and going for another Bubble Beam. Now this one, my opponent actually does call the bait there, so they will make it to a 3rd Body Slam, and in return, I will give up a shield, because I will be able to wing attack down, get switch advantage, and leave with a Brave Bird loaded. So now here, I'm going to go for yet another Bubble Beam bait. Does get the shield from my opponent, and now I'm going to save swap into my Vigoroth. Here, a little bit of a misplay. Should have been more patient, should have overfarmed, knowing that, hey, since they are debuffed, I will be able to survive this Brave Bird, as my opponent makes a catch onto their Pumpkaboo, excuse me. And now, I do make it to Rock Slide, but even so, this matchup is looking pretty dire. My opponent smartly lets me get the counter down, so I won't be able to get energy on a Pokemon that I have in the back, which in this case would be Eevee. So now, you know, it's like, I'm thinking, hey man, you know, it's going to be a tough matchup, right? Like a Brave Bird's going to one-shot, you know, I'm going to potentially go for a catch or a throw or something, but nope. Eevee really does have that dog in him. Able to hang on with 1 HP, make it to the lethal Body Slam, and we take the game. GG's to my opponent. These really were some fun battles. You know, I saw how high Eevee was up on the rankings, and decided to give it a go, as after all, I did have the rank 1, and boy, did it exceed all expectations I had for it. I did end up going 12-8 on the day with the team. There were a couple matches I did lose due to misplays that I could have flipped, but that happens when you're getting used to a new team. So in short, yes, Eevee is here, Eevee is good, and I highly recommend it. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.